online. This is a very serious business, but a lot of this is really approachable, and we're experiencing even more and more in our daily lives. Take, for example, identity and access management. You know, we used to say trust but verify. Now we say zero trust. I don't trust you at all. So yes, I know I just logged in 2 or 3 minutes ago, but I'm obliged to provide my password again because the system doesn't trust that it's still me and I'm still behind, beavering away at the keyboard. But zero trust is a great strategy for cybersecurity and online endeavors. I don't recommend using this with personal relationships. You don't want to be asking your spouse for their ID all the time. I don't recommend that. I don't recommend that. And that joke, by the way, usually gets more laughs. So, but I know a lot of you guys are jet lagged and so forth. So that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. All right, next. So this, you might think that this is a provocative statement, but yes, it's true that the metaverse is closer than you think, and CES 2023 is going to, I think, really bring that into sharp relief, and you're going to see a lot of evidence here. Now, of course, any dialogue these days around metaverse is very likely to be met with skepticism. And that's okay because we've seen no shortage of marketing spin, and then also we've probably had debates with our friends and colleagues on what is metaverse and debates about definition. And so I do think it's true that metaverse as a term is still a speculative one. Metaverse is still a speculative term, but make no mistake, this is a real trend. Just as the internet was a real trend in the early 1990s, didn't know what it was. I'm old enough to remember that, many of you are, but that's exactly the same dynamic that is manifesting around metaverse right now. But here's what's important. Here's what's important. At CES 2023, we start to see legit substance forming around this trend of metaverse. What am I talking about? Well, two things really. One is technology innovation, of course, at CES. But the other is business strategy. That'll be illustrated in different use cases that you're going to be able to check out and maybe even participate in through a demo at CES. Which is why I think it's better positioned, metaverse, as actually the metaverse of things. Because what we're learning about metaverse now, and you'll see this and witness this at CES, is that I think the hypothesis before was that metaverse meant these hyper-immersive shared experiences, something like Ready Player One. And that's actually turning out not to be true. In fact, there are degrees of immersion. But what metaverse to me really is the next generation of the internet. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is an online experience that has an elevated sense of immersion. We're all familiar with online shopping, two-dimensional, an image, maybe there's a chat box. There's a lot more that we can do. And here's what it's going to look like. Really two modalities that you're going to experience at CES 2023. And the first one is virtualization. So what is virtualization? Well, this is metaverse manifesting in essentially virtualized 3D interactive spaces that importantly are accessible with a laptop, tablet, or phone. So this is really Web 3 and a much more compelling and interactive experience and has, again, an elevated sense of immersion. A lot of digital twinning. This is consumer facing, many because a lot of people don't own VR headsets quite yet. Now we know that will change in the coming years, but also can be individualized. The second modality you'll see here at CES is, of course, immersion. Immersion, and these tend to be more on the enterprise side for the reason I mentioned earlier. Not a lot of consumers own a VR headset yet, so a lot of enterprises are leveraging this technology that tends to be more fully immersive, a lot of digital twinning going on, simulation, a lot of collaboration, shared experiences, but in an enterprise context. So let's take a look at some of the innovation that we're going to see at CES. I want to start with virtualization and a company called TouchCast, which is part of the Microsoft exhibit over at West Hall. Now, TouchCast is a new breed of service provider, if you like, metaverse as a service. And I think Unity Technologies is another example of this emerging breed of service providers. And in this case, TouchCast has this virtualized retail space, 3D interactive, but it has a live person, a one-on-one individualized experience. That's refreshing. That's an elevated sense of immersion, and it's certainly leveled up from online shopping today. I think you'd agree. And this has some great benefits because whether we're shopping for a computer or a new pair of sneakers, the things that we can do in this virtualized 3D interactive environment are incredible. We can have a cutaway of the shoe to see exactly how this foam protects the runner's foot, or we can look inside the machine and see exactly how things are working. And all this can be done from home. And for the salesperson's sake, the sales rep, it looks just like being on a Teams call. This is innovation, and this is starting to happen now, virtualization in the metaverse. What about immersion? This is where it starts to get really interesting. And a company you're going to want to check out is OVR, stands for Olfactory VR. They're over in Venetian. And yes, they have digitized sense. But this is not your father's smell-o-vision. This is deeply impactful, and the statistics around olfactory elements rendering for memory and sense of immersion speak for themselves. And as it turns out, our sense of smell is actually our primary sense, not sight or hearing, but our sense of smell. And obviously it has a lot to do with our sense of taste. So it's our primal sense. And what you're going to see is, yeah, there are entertainment applications, but a number of a very long tail of therapeutic applications. So really advanced technology, bringing in smell to these immersive experiences and emblematic of the kind of path that we're on of deeper and deeper and deeper immersion as we move forward in time in this decade, related to metaverse. But what about strategy? Well, again, I've compared where we are with metaverse today with the early first days of the internet, and it's true. And I think right in the middle, the basic fundamental strategies of metaverse, and whether or not it's virtualized or fully immersive, are the same and congruent with the internet today as we know it. These three key strategies of communication, collaboration, transaction. And as we push these one way or the other for the consumer or the enterprise, you can see how we have a little bit different take on these. In the enterprise, it could be simulation, like I've talked about, a lot of digital twins starting to happen, and engineering and design and so forth, a shared immersive environment. All the engineers in a shared immersive metaverse space working on an aircraft engine or whatever it is. And for the consumer, it could be a retail experience, as I described, or competition, which is code for gaming. Lots of different opportunities. So we're learning about technology innovation with the metaverse, but also what is the business strategy? And that's profound and significant. And that's the substance that I was talking about. So what about transportation, mobility, automotive? Now, if you were with us for CES 2022, then you got to experience the shiny brand new West Hall, which is pictured here. And it's still very, very new, and it definitely is still super cool and cavernous, but this is where you'll find all those transportation exhibits. And under that roof, we're gonna see really three key technology themes. And the first one is this, is of course, we're gonna see more electric vehicles, but as equally important is how the electrification ecosystem is evolving. Now, what does that mean? Well, what I'm talking about is advancements in battery chemistry, battery design, also charging systems. How are these things coming forward? Because having more electric vehicles is one thing, and that's how we grow the market, more EVs and more price points, different shapes and sizes for different customers and consumers. But it's also equally important to see how battery technology, how is range getting, how are we able to drive further on a charge, what's happening with fast charging and so forth. So we'll get to see that. Second is really the advancement of autonomy. We've been talking for years and years about self-driving vehicles, haven't we? But now we're starting to see autonomy really earnestly move beyond passenger vehicles. And I would put at the salient of that narrative are self-driving trucks. I talked earlier about a labor shortage. Not just a US thing, a global thing. We just can't hire enough skilled workers like truck drivers. And here in the States, according to the American Trucking Association, by the year 2030, we will have, here again in the United States, a shortage of 160,000 truck drivers. How are we going to close that gap? Technology has the answer. So self-driving trucks, very important. We're delivering a lot of stuff online. We'll probably do even more in the metaverse. And so all this has got to get delivered somehow. Humans are the nice to have. Technology has the answer. We'll see it over at West Hall. And third is the transformation of the in-vehicle experience. And there's so much to unpack here. I need another slide. So let's go to the next one. And this is what I'm talking about. And just taking a look at this slide, you get what I mean when I say screenification. You get what I'm talking about when I say screenification. Yeah, incredible. So a lot more screens, the full breadth of the dash. It's like, yeah, I see your big screen in the center stack, and I raise you a whole screen across the entire dash and more in the back. So we start to layer in 5G connectivity, V2X connectivity. Really what I'm saying is the vehicle cabin is really a nexus for so many different technology trends. And they're coalescing, and we have this convergence, this confluence of trends that are happening. We used to talk about entertainment a lot in the vehicle. Well, now cars are becoming marketplaces. And not just for the passengers, but also the driver when we think about voice control. The old way is I order my latte from Starbucks on my app. They're working on it. I'm going to go pick it up. The new way is using voice control and services to order that latte while I can really use a latte. Hey, and order that while you're driving using voice control, and it's waiting for you when you arrive. So the vehicle becoming a marketplace, but also another new trend, features as a service. Features that you've heard about paying a subscription fee for your heated seats. Will that be the tip of the iceberg? I don't know. We're going to find out, and maybe some of the vehicle OEMs here at CES 2023 will have something to say about that. But it's entirely possible, as recurring revenue becomes increasingly important to industry players, not just in, say, the wireless industry, but also automotive, might the AM/FM radio that we all might have taken for granted by this time become a subscription service. If you want that, you have to pay a monthly fee. Again, I don't know, and I'm not saying it will, but features as a service is definitely an emerging trend we'll learn more about at CES 2023. So I've said a lot there, but just to kind of encapsulate this, I mean, electrification, yes, but the point I want to make on this slide with electrification is not just land-based vehicles, but vehicles, yes, on land, but also in air with RISE and their personal electric VTOL, which they'll be giving demos of that outside of West Hall in the Platinum lot. So you'll actually be able to see this thing fly, which is going to be really cool. And then, of course, Candela is here with their electric hydrofoil watercraft, which is also cool, and it's cool in this factor. It needs no explanation. I mean, that thing looks awesome, and it's available for sale. But they're here, and you can check it out at CES. And then, of course, sensor innovation of all kinds, optical sensors, certainly LiDAR. If you're an electrical engineer, then you know that a lot of this innovation centers around solid-state architectures. And vehicle performance, different tier ones, shape-changing body panels potentially, and grills like the Mesa Plus from Magna as another example. And to talk a lot about this, we've got not one, but two automotive and transportation-focused keynotes, one from BMW, one from Stellantis. Definitely want to put these on your calendar, your diary to check out, because they're going to have a lot to say about the future of mobility between these two mega brands in automotive. You know how sometimes in technology we marvel that science fiction has become reality? Well, I think that's certainly true, and I know this is an antiquated kind of example. I'm an old guy, but it is true, and if you think about all these sensors and capabilities in the modern smartwatch, even just from a health standpoint, and more if you think about other advanced systems, say from MedOne, which has basically the equivalent of a medical tricorder in a box, you kind of start to feel like Dr. McCoy a little bit. Feel like Dr. McCoy. But as the Starship Enterprise had Dr. McCoy doing his thing in the sick bay, what are we doing down here on Earth? Well, a lot of us are constructing home health hubs. And we know the story about telemedicine and telehealth. During the season of the pandemic and the health crisis, this massively exploded for very obvious reasons. But what's happening now in the space is that we're seeing more sensors and wearables and other diagnostic tools come in to augment that. So more interactive live data streams that can be captured by the physician on the other end. So not just a bunch of talk, but actually a real data exchange. And that really levels up that level of care in telehealth. And certainly we know that telehealth is instrumental in extending care. Not everybody can get into the doctor's office, certainly if they live in remote areas. Maybe that's miles, kilometers and kilometers away. Therapeutic systems, Abbott is here as another example. with a lot of advanced therapies using technology, pain management, also managing chronic disease. So this is a great example of when we talk about tech making life better. If you're managing a chronic disease like diabetes and you can have a technology solution that makes it easier and you feel better all the time, you're healthier and you live a longer life, that needs no explanation. That's amazing to see, and digital therapeutics in full force at CES this year. But it's not just about managing chronic disease or our visits with our doctors. It's also about health, fitness, really, and as part of the home health hub and all kinds of connected health equipment and so forth. And here's another recurring revenue subscription service in some cases, but it all adds up to this home health hub that we're starting to see, not just here in the States, but really around the world being formulated. And I can go on and on and on about innovation in health tech, but let me just focus very quickly on three areas that I've really alluded to. The on-demand network around telehealth and these advanced sensors combining for an elevated experience. One particular use case where this is phenomenal is in remote patient monitoring. The old way, after you had your operation or procedure, you were obliged to spend so many days in the hospital. Not anymore, potentially. You can, with technology and these on-demand networks and sensors, you can be monitored from the comfort of your home. And nobody wants to spend 1 minute longer than they have to in the hospital. Am I right? So this is a great example of tech innovation and a new frontier. Mental wellness is another. So stress, anxiety management, also monitoring depression. And I want to make an important point here. In this case, with mental wellness, technology is not a substitute for the advice of a counselor, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, physician, whatever. It's really meant as a tool for monitoring and help in between visits. In between visits, helping stay on track with that therapy from the counselor or psychologist is one example. So not a replacement, but really a tool to help and hopefully lead to a quicker recovery. In virtual reality, I alluded to therapeutic uses on the OVR slide. So this, no need to go into here, but there are so many use cases tumbling out of VR as it relates to health. And now I'm laboring the point a little bit, but I know you guys like examples from the show floor, and here are three of them that you'll see. Essence Group for remote patient monitoring, Abbott I've talked about with their pain management Proclaim Plus solution, and SK with their Zero glasses, ordinary looking glasses, but with sensors they can predict epileptic seizures. So pretty important if you suffer from epilepsy, getting a heads up that you might have a seizure coming on. And to talk about all this, another amazing keynote, this is why I like to highlight, because these are great ways to capture some amazing perspective and also talk a lot about technology. We have in panel a tremendous group of doctors moderated by another doctor. So what I'm really saying is there's a lot of knowledge in medicine, but also tech. And it may say future of care in America, but I would wager that that's a proxy for care around the world, and probably will have something to do with telehealth, as I described before. Sustainability and ESG is another trend that you're going to see at the show, and this slide is intentionally, the graphic is, it's a very horizontal trend. Put another way, I think it's going to be omnipresent at CES 2023. So we know there's been a rising dialogue around sustainability and ESG in all kinds of different places, all across the economy, every kind of different sector. Everybody's talking about this. And with tech alone, there's a lot underneath this umbrella of sustainability. Not time to talk about all of it, but I can talk about some of it, like clean air, alternative power, and then also food and ag tech. Let's take a look at some of that. Some more examples from the show floor, including a couple of startups that I know you guys love to document out there, that just the cradle of innovation from startups in Reef Park. Aqua Robotics has, as you might be able to tell from the picture, a robot that swims inside water pipes to create a digital twin, but also to look for leaks. And the statistic I'll leave you with is that globally, about 30 billion cubic meters of clean water are lost due to leaks each and every year. That's a lot of clean water. We can do better, and solutions like this help. The Jackery is your personal power windmill. Pretty cool if let's say you're at the beach and it's like someone has their solar array. Here you come with your solar power, your wind powered windmill. So alternative power sources, really cool. And I talked a little bit about battery technology in the automotive chapter, but Leighton Jar has a new take on battery technology. If you're familiar, batteries have anodes and cathodes, positive and negative. And up till now, they use graphite, which is pretty harmful for the environment if it's not disposed of correctly, which often, I'm sad to say, is not. Using silicon is very neutral for the environment, and you have only to look at your nearest beach to find a lot of silicon around. So it's not a rare earth mineral or anything like that by any stretch. But what about ag tech? Well, I talked about this new phase of automation and virtualization that's starting to manifest really across the economy, and I've talked a bit about that. But this slide really documents what I think we can expect in terms of agriculture. So what you're looking at here is essentially the fully automated farm with 5G connectivity. We have sensors in the soil, in the sky, with drones doing spectrographic analysis. We have intelligent connected silos with predictive analytics that are estimating just exactly how much grain or whatever it is that we're going to harvest. We have autonomous systems in the field doing the tilling, the harvesting. A lot of that data is computed at the edge, but even more is computed off-site in the cloud, and a lot of the insights are downloaded right to the farmer, where he or she gets a whole new perspective on how much fertilizer they need to pour. Maybe they can commit to a futures price and get a jump on their competitors, but also really optimize food production, and that's really what we're talking about here. But I'm not just going to talk about this. Actually, John Deere is. In their keynote, we have John May, the CEO of John Deere, here at CES. And this, on the screen, is their newest innovation, the autonomous tractor. If you look closely, there's no farmer in there. There's no farmer. It's driving itself. And so again, how will technology help feed a growing world? We have more and more mouths to feed, so we desperately need technology innovation to help us. And John Deere will have some great examples of that. Okay, last chapter on gaming and services. And in this chapter, I want to feature some of our amazing research that we do each and every year at Consumer Technology Association. A lot of it focused on the US market, as we are the North American Trade Association for Consumer Technology. But in any case, I'll be featuring some data from our very recent Future of Gaming study that was actually a refresh of work that we did in 2019. Very interesting comparisons. And importantly for you as media, we're releasing today our updated industry forecast. And so I'll be featuring some services forecast data in this chapter. But to come back to gaming for a moment, one of the key insights, of course, we know gaming is very important to the industry, but it's also important to culture. It's become very important to culture. Let me show you what I'm talking about and some of the evidence to document what I'm talking about. According to our 2022 Future of Gaming study, now this was released just last fall, just a few months ago, the US market today has 164 million self-described gamers. And by the way, I know this is US data, but trends are global these days, and I think this is a good proxy for more global trends. But that's a very big number, ages 13 to 64. In fact, if you look at the US general population across that age cohort, the gamer segment represents nearly 3/4 of the general population between 13 and 64. So a big number, but an even more surprising and another big number is how much time people are spending gaming these days. Back in 2019, our research found that the average gamer in the US spends 16 hours a week playing games. Pretty big number. What is it today? Today it's a full day, 24 hours. 24 hours on average per week spent gaming. Now, how could that be possible? Well, take a look closer. A lot of gamers in the US describe themselves as a casual gamer, but also as a mobile gamer. They confess that they're a mobile gamer. But I don't know about you, but on the plane, I saw several people around me in my vicinity, pretty much the entire 5-hour flight from Washington, D.C. to Las Vegas, they were playing some kind of a game. So it's all these little in-between moments that we spend gaming adds up to a lot of time. Not just hardcore gamers, you know, staying up into the wee hours of the night or the morning playing games. It's a lot of us. So really interesting. But why are people spending so much time gaming these days? And this was another profound takeaway from our research. And it's this, is that we found that consumers are still playing games for the age-old reason of entertainment, escapism, some competition, if you like Fortnite, as one example. But increasingly, it's about connection and socialization. So what I'm saying is, the game is really a construct or a medium for socialization. And I myself, guilty as charged. You know, I connect with my friends online, and yeah, we're playing a game, but we're also talking about what's been going on. We'll plan maybe at the next happy hour or something like that. It's a construct in many ways for socialization. And I think when we think about metaverse and those immersive experiences, that will only grow and increase. But what about at CES, to kind of pull this back now for gaming at CES? Once again, a lot of innovation is going to empower connections, whether it's hardware, cool new displays and monitors, haptic systems, deepening immersion for these experiences. And yes, I'm hopeful that we'll hear more from Sony about their PlayStation VR2 headset. They talked about that at CES 2022, but hopefully they will again, and they'll give us more details. So, and by the way, the gamer cohort or audience or segment is pretty much purpose-built for these shared immersive experiences, and that's another key finding from our research. But what about services? Okay, well we know certainly coming out of the pandemic that services have become very important to consumers, and in fact a lot of consumers adopted a whole bunch of new services during the season of the pandemic, like ordering groceries online. And the key takeaway is that consumers, not just in the US, but around the world, are sticking with those. So we've seen really a transmutation, a modulation of consumer behavior, really emphasizing services. And to provide more evidence, I mentioned our brand new forecast that we're releasing. You can get a copy of the press release tonight. Here in the US market, 31 cents of every tech dollar is attributable to services spending. That's a big percentage, and it's only going to grow and increase. Because I think more and more, it's more about services and the things that we're doing with tech, and less about the hardware itself. Less about the hardware itself, and more what we're doing with tech, which is why we're seeing more competition in the services space, across cloud gaming, fitness, so many different aspects. And also new business models. I think the whole ad-supported video streaming business model has gained a lot of news and commentary, and helps extend those services to households and maybe reduce churn in some cases. But really services today underpinning today's modern digital lifestyle. And to close out this chapter, again, this is from our recent forecast update. You can very clearly see the ramp, at least here in the US market, of services spending. And this was, again, a function of the season of the pandemic, where we really transmuted consumer behavior. It's more about services today. Services being very important. And although we've kind of leveled out here, most of this ties to the current economic environment and inflation, paying more for everything. Consumers are taking a little bit harder look at their services portfolio, if you like. I think, though, once we get through this economic downturn, we'll start to see that services sector start to grow again. And we'll probably see a whole slew of new services here at CES 2023. Okay, well that concludes my remarks. Unveiled is next. We've talked about a lot of trends tonight here in this ballroom. There's even more innovation waiting for you, and even more beyond that on the show floor of CES 2023. Much success at the show. Thank you.
몰랐네. 깜짝 놀랐네.
拜。